Is this personal for you because of what's happened?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Like, there's no way people can just get away with putting their hands on me, and that's just, you're getting a free pass.
Fabio Wardley was clearly struggling to accept what just happened against Daniel Dubois, and you could hear the anger building in his voice already. After getting brutally broken down in the ring by Dubois, Fabio looked completely furious backstage, and reports now claim he even snapped afterwards, screaming that he wanted revenge and would have killed him if security had not stepped in.
Fans, because that means they get to see it again maybe, and they get another go at it. So yeah, it's still a bitter pill to swallow. It's not a loss, but...
Things completely boiled over after the fight, as Fabio Wardley reportedly lost control following the devastating loss to Daniel Dubois. Security had to jump in fast as tensions exploded backstage, and fans were left stunned watching Wardley react with pure rage after being brutally stopped by Dubois. Frank Warren tried to calm the situation down, but by that point, the damage had already been done. The atmosphere after the fight was absolutely toxic because Fabio Wardley simply could not handle the humiliation of getting broken apart by Daniel Dubois in front of the boxing world. Dubois stayed composed, while Fabio completely lost his cool backstage. And that reaction has only made fans believe the defeat hurt him far more than anyone expected.
Looking at Tyson there, do you believe that he would ever become undisputed?
Yeah.
At that point, you believed?
I believed in him. When we sat down, I knew what he had, and he unfortunately had lots of well-documented problems. He won the title. He didn't lose the title in the ring. He had to give the belts back, and he had, as we all know, some...
Adam Smith admitted the controversy has only made this rivalry even bigger, and you can already feel the chaos building around a possible rematch. But many fans believe this was deeper than simple fight hype because Fabio Wardley looked genuinely furious after Daniel Dubois exposed him in brutal fashion. Dubois walked away looking like the mentally stronger fighter, while Fabio's emotional reaction raised serious questions about whether he can recover from such a damaging defeat.
I mean, in boxing terms, should that happen at a head-to-head? Of course not, but these things do happen. This is the fight business, and it's just...
Eddie Hearn almost sounded entertained by the madness, but this situation clearly went beyond normal boxing tension. Music. Fabio Wardley was boiling with anger after Daniel Dubois embarrassed him, and the frustration was written all over his face. Dubois, meanwhile, looked ice-cold and confident because he knew he had already won the real battle inside the ring. Fans now believe Fabio wants revenge immediately after being physically and mentally dismantled by Dubois.
You know, I think when you're getting poked like that in a face-to-face, you know, after a while the temper goes, and it's good. You know, I think it's going to be that kind of...
Carl Froch brutally exposed the mistakes Fabio Wardley made, and honestly, it is hard to disagree with him after what Daniel Dubois did that night. Fabio looked reckless, desperate, and completely lost once Dubois settled into the fight. Dubois stayed patient, picked his shots, and slowly broke Wardley down round by round. That is why many fans now feel Fabio's backstage outburst came from pure frustration because, inside the ring, he simply had no answers for Dubois.
Fabio Wardley neglected all of his little bit of boxing skill, what he's learned over the white collar and through the fights that he's been involved in. I mean, he's had a fantastic career, and I don't think this is the end of Fabio Wardley at all, but he showed that he's a bit naive and a bit green. Like I said, his attacks were very crude. I don't know what Ben Davison should have been telling him. Stop throwing that overhand right from out of range. He's looking for the knockout punch. He's not even got his feet in range.
Those comments from Dominic Engel were absolutely ruthless, and they showed just how badly this defeat damaged Fabio Wardley's reputation. Daniel Dubois did not just beat him physically, he exposed the gap between domestic level and true world level boxing. Fabio took terrifying punishment, and by the end, he looked completely broken. That is why his emotional reaction afterwards shocked so many people, because fans could see a fighter struggling to accept a brutal reality.
Slight difference, fighting a world champion, a legitimate world champion for a title, and beating a world champion who's already a world champion. And Fabio Wardley hasn't beat a current world champion to be the champion, has he?
Josie Parker's been a champion.
Yeah, but he wasn't the champion, right. So
Wade Plemons painted a terrifying picture of just how brutal this fight really became for Fabio Wardley. Daniel Dubois landed monstrous shots that would have finished most heavyweights, and somehow Fabio kept standing through pure toughness alone. But by the later rounds, he looked completely exhausted, disoriented, and beaten down. That punishment clearly carried over after the fight because the rage and chaos backstage made it obvious Fabio was still emotionally shattered by what Dubois had done to him.
I mean, this got to a point where Fabio is stumbling around. He's not even aware of his surroundings, it doesn't look like. The doctors are checking on him round after round. And, you know, I said Daniel had big stones to get off the canvas. Fabio Wardley's got a chin of iron because he ate some absolute nukes. Shots that put Anthony Joshua on the floor from Daniel Dubois and probably would have put a lesser man in the hospital that night. I mean, I'm sure Fabio's in the hospital now, but stretcher job.
Barry McGuigan sounded genuinely concerned, and honestly, after watching what Daniel Dubois did to Fabio Wardley, it is easy to understand why. Fabio absorbed frightening punishment throughout the fight, and by the end, he looked completely destroyed, both physically and mentally. Dubois broke him down with power, precision, and pressure until there was nothing left. That is why the backstage incident shocked fans even more because, instead of accepting defeat, Fabio reacted with anger and chaos. Many now believe the loss affected him deeper than anyone first realized, and a music rematch could be extremely dangerous.
I genuinely don't think you should take that rematch. I think that's too dangerous. I genuinely think he took way too much punishment, and that was so severe. If I were him, I'd never fight again.
Derek Chisora absolutely tore into Fabio Wardley and did not hold back for a second. According to Chisora, the biggest problem was Fabio abandoning basic boxing fundamentals while trying to hunt for one massive knockout shot against Daniel Dubois. That reckless approach played perfectly into Dubois' hands because, once Daniel settled down, he started controlling the fight behind smart pressure and brutal combinations. Fabio looked desperate, swinging wildly, while Dubois looked calm, composed, and dangerous. Fans now believe Fabio's explosive reaction after the fight came from frustration because, deep down, he knows Dubois exposed serious flaws in his game.
Fabio was not ready for boxing. You was no jab, nothing, looking for power shots. It's like he didn't train. You was too busy commentating. Little bastard. He was supposed to fucking train in the gym. How many jabs did Fabio chuck? Last jab, he didn't chuck no jabs. He didn't do anything with
Duke McKenzie gave Fabio credit for his toughness, but even he admitted the fight became painful to watch. Daniel Dubois was landing huge right hands clean over and over again, and Fabio simply had no answer. Once the momentum shifted, the punishment became terrifying, especially in the later rounds when Dubois started walking him down with confidence. Fans respected Fabio's heart, but many also felt sorry for him because he looked completely overwhelmed by the sheer power coming back at him. That brutal beating clearly explains why emotions exploded backstage after the fight finally ended.
Fabio Wardley has got a heart as big as a bucket, and some of the punches he took last night, he may not come back from, because he was taking right hands, he was eating them so flush. It was quite brutal to watch at times. I've actually felt sorry for Fabio.
Johnny Nelson pointed out exactly where the fight changed, and it was the moment Daniel Dubois realized Fabio Wardley had no backup plan. Early on, Fabio looked sharp and dangerous, but once Dubois started timing him, everything fell apart. The shape disappeared, the confidence faded, and Fabio became vulnerable. Every time Dubois landed clean, Daniel stayed disciplined and slowly took complete control of the fight, while Fabio looked more desperate with every round. That mental collapse inside the ring now makes the backstage attack and angry revenge comments feel even more personal and emotional for Wardley.
That's the first half of the fight, he kept his shape. You know, the jabs were working, dominant head to body, kept slinging that big right hand over the top. Now and again, he'd whip it up the middle. He had good feet for a big guy, good feet. And I thought, you look the part. But then there was no plan B that he could rely on if that didn't work. And you saw from round 6, he lost his shape. The shape had gone because there was no plan B. You know, when he get hit, it was like he completely turned.
Daniel Dubois showed massive respect towards Fabio Wardley here, but you can also hear the confidence of a man who survived chaos and still came out on top. After being dropped early, Dubois stayed calm, gathered himself, and completely turned the fight around through sheer determination and brutal power. That is what makes his victory even more impressive because mentally, he never broke under pressure. While Fabio lost control emotionally after the defeat, Dubois carried himself like a true world champion. Many fans now believe Daniel proved he belongs at the very top of the heavyweight division.
What a warrior he is, and came through that test.
You know, coming off the back of a loss, I was a bit nervy to start off with and a bit all over the place, but I pulled it together and got the victory.
David Haye summed up perfectly why the boxing world still cannot stop talking about this war between Daniel Dubois and Fabio Wardley. The fight had absolutely everything, including knockdowns, drama, momentum swings, and brutal exchanges that left fans stunned from start to finish. But while people praise the entertainment side of it all, there is also a darker side because Fabio took frightening punishment once Dubois found his rhythm. Daniel showed unbelievable composure after the early chaos and slowly broke Wardley apart with cleaner, sharper, and more damaging shots. By the final rounds, Dubois looked like the stronger, smarter, and mentally tougher heavyweight. That is why Fabio's furious backstage reaction shocked so many people, because it felt like the frustration of a fighter who realized he had been beaten by the better man on the biggest stage of his career.
Captivating, that entertaining, round after round, backwards and forwards. The heart on these guys, the balls, the bravery. That's what you want to pay. That's what you want to. We hope every time we tune in for a heavyweight championship, you're getting that type of energy. They both gave everything they had. I could watch that 10.
Sam Jones highlighted the exact moment this fight completely turned on its head because, early on, it looked like Fabio Wardley might actually pull off the upset. Daniel Dubois was under huge pressure after the knockdowns, and many fans thought the fight was slipping away from him. But instead of panicking, Dubois stayed calm, tightened up behind the jab, and slowly started dismantling Fabio with brutal precision. From that point onwards, the momentum completely changed, and Wardley began taking enormous punishment round after round. Fabio showed unbelievable toughness, but toughness alone was never going to be enough against a dangerous finisher like Dubois. The emotional scenes after the fight only added more drama because Fabio clearly could not accept how badly things had unraveled once Daniel took control of the contest.
It was just incredible. I couldn't believe what I was watching at times there. I mean, listen, it was all going wrong at the start, wasn't it, when Fabio put him down a couple of times, but Daniel showed the heart of a lion in there. Got it together, got behind his jab, and really started busting Fabio up. And by the way, Fabio Wardley is one hard bastard. My God, what a hard man. So is Daniel Dubois. Two very, very tough, strong men going at it for the world heavyweight title.
Ajit Kabale could barely believe what he had witnessed because this fight turned into complete madness almost immediately. Daniel Dubois getting dropped early made the atmosphere even more intense. But what impressed people most was the way he recovered under pressure. Many fighters would have folded mentally after such a dangerous start, but Dubois showed serious championship mentality and fought his way back into the contest with pure aggression and discipline. Fabio Wardley had moments of success, but once Daniel found his timing, the fight became brutally one-sided. The shots landing from Dubois looked heavier with every round, and Fabio started fading badly. That is why the chaos after the fight felt so emotional, because Wardley looked like a man struggling to deal with the reality of such a devastating collapse. Fraser Clarke admitted this was not some technical boxing masterclass, but that honestly made the fight even more unforgettable for the fans. It was pure heavyweight violence, with both men throwing everything at each other from the opening bell. Daniel Dubois deserves enormous credit because, after the early knockdowns, he could easily have crumbled under the pressure. Instead, he stayed composed and eventually overwhelmed Fabio Wardley with relentless pressure and devastating punches. Fabio's bravery kept him in the fight far longer than expected, but by the end, he looked exhausted, battered, and emotionally drained. The backstage confrontation afterwards only increased the drama because fans could see just how deeply this defeat affected Wardley after such a brutal war inside the ring.
Fabio Wardley, absolute warrior. It wasn't the most skilled heavyweight fight I've ever seen, but it was just what the fans wanted to see. The fans wanted that. I mean, that was blood and guts, but right on the bar.
Dave Coldwell was stunned that Fabio Wardley somehow stayed on his feet because Daniel Dubois landed some absolutely monstrous shots throughout the fight. Most heavyweights would have collapsed long before the later rounds, but Fabio kept surviving through sheer toughness and determination alone. Still, the deeper the fight went, the more obvious it became that Dubois was completely taking over physically and mentally. Daniel looked sharper, stronger, and far more controlled, while Fabio seemed to be running purely on heart. That is what made the aftermath so shocking because, instead of calmly accepting defeat, Fabio reportedly exploded backstage demanding revenge after suffering the most brutal and painful loss of his entire career against Daniel Dubois.
What a chin! I can't believe, after all that, after all the punishment it took, Wardley's still never been down. Incredible chin. The man's built different. Unbelievable. And what a performance from Dubois.
Dave Allen pointed out something very interesting here because Daniel Dubois genuinely did look nervous and vulnerable early in the fight. Fabio Wardley had a huge opportunity after those knockdowns, and for a moment it looked like music. Dubois might completely fall apart under the pressure. But that is what separates elite heavyweights from the rest because Daniel somehow gathered himself and turned absolute chaos into total control. Once Dubois settled behind the jab, the fight completely changed, and Fabio started getting walked onto huge shots over and over again. Wardley looked dangerous early, but mentally he seemed to unravel once Daniel refused to break. By the end, Dubois looked like a proper world-level heavyweight, while Fabio looked exhausted, frustrated, and emotionally crushed, which explains why the backstage scenes became so heated after the fight ended.
Nervous as anything. Felt bad for him in the first round. He was really jittery. Fabio probably really, looking back, I should have just jumped all over him because Dubois, as great as Dubois is, and he's a fantastic fighter on top.
Don Charles sounded incredibly proud of Daniel Dubois, and honestly, he had every reason to be after what his fighter produced that night. Coming off a damaging stoppage loss, many people doubted whether Dubois could mentally recover, but instead, he delivered one of the most savage comeback performances of his career. Daniel showed heart, patience, and serious resilience after getting dropped early by Fabio Wardley. Rather than panicking, he slowly broke Fabio down until the fight completely swung in his favor. Don Charles also seemed in no rush for another immediate war because everyone involved knows how brutal this fight really was. Meanwhile, Fabio's angry reaction after the loss only added more tension because fans are now desperate to see whether revenge will eventually force these two heavyweights back together again.
Anthony Joshua had a rematch clause when he fought Daniel. If that's up to them, if they want to exercise it. Like I said, it's too premature. Let's go and digest this win. Let Daniel go and have some rest. Remember, that's him coming off the back of a loss, a stoppage loss, and to pull out that sort of performance.
Stan Dubois made it clear just how proud the family was after Daniel battled through adversity and produced such a dramatic victory. Getting dropped early would have broken many fighters emotionally, but Daniel kept believing in himself and eventually took Fabio Wardley into deep, dangerous waters. Once the momentum shifted, there was only one man controlling music, the fight, and that was Dubois. The confidence coming from Daniel's corner grew with every round, while Fabio looked more desperate and fatigued. Stan also shut down talk about Alexander Usyk straight away because, right now, the focus is clearly on enjoying this massive win. But with Fabio reportedly demanding revenge after the backstage chaos, fans already feel this rivalry is far from over despite how brutally Dubois dominated the second half of the fight.
Absolutely brilliant. He showed what he was made of tonight, and he delivered. That's all I can say.
What were you saying to him in between rounds?
Knock him out.
Stan, before you go, do you want to see him fight Alexander Usyk again?
No, I want to see him fight this giant.
Frank Warren carefully kept the door open for a rematch, and you can understand exactly why because the drama around this fight has exploded across the boxing world. Between the brutal action inside the ring and Fabio Wardley reportedly attacking Daniel Dubois afterwards, this rivalry suddenly feels far more personal than before. But at the same time, many people are questioning whether Fabio should even take another fight this soon after the punishment he absorbed. Daniel Dubois looked physically stronger, mentally tougher, and far more composed once the fight settled down. Fabio's emotional reaction afterwards only reinforced the feeling that this defeat hit him extremely hard. Whether the rematch happens next or later down the line, one thing is certain. Fans now desperately want to see how this explosive heavyweight story ends.
Well, he's pissed off. I mean, he was a big fight. He's trained very hard. If you don't fight, you don't get paid. You imagine the cost involved in a training camp,
What we witnessed between Daniel Dubois and Fabio Wardley was not just a heavyweight fight, but a complete war that spilled over into pure chaos after the final bell. Dubois showed the mentality of a true world-level fighter by surviving early danger and then slowly breaking Wardley down until there was no resistance left. Fabio, on the other hand, showed unbelievable heart, but also clear frustration and emotional collapse once he realized he could not match Dubois when it mattered most. That is exactly why the situation exploded afterwards because this was not a clean and calm defeat. It was a painful breakdown in real time. Reports of Fabio's angry reaction and claims of revenge only add more fuel to what is already becoming one of the most explosive heavyweight stories in boxing right now. Now, the big question is simple. Will we see a rematch, or has Daniel Dubois already closed the chapter completely with this performance? One thing is certain, the rivalry is now personal, and fans are divided on what comes next. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you subscribe to Fighter Corner News for more raw boxing stories, updates, and behind-the-scenes drama from the heavyweight division. And comment below who you think really won the mental battle, Dubois or Wardley.